this challenge, I'll introduce using microphone input into Scratch by making a simple program that shows the loudness on a moving dial like a speedometer. I'll go to Events. So far I've used my mouse and keyboard to get input into my Scratch program when it's running. I've used mouse clicks on the green flag and on the sprites to get input. I've also used key presses on my keyboard, and I've typed in answers for input into my Scratch programs. With the loudness variable, I can also use microphone loudness for input into my Scratch program. I'll go to Block Help. On loudness, it shows that it reports the value from 1 to 100 of sounds detected by the computer microphone. I can use these different levels to animate things and to make decisions. I'll close Help, and I'll check loudness. I can see the variable now, and you can see it's changing while I'm talking. Loudness runs whether or not I've clicked on the green flag. I'll click on the green flag. I can see the value changing with my voice still. I'll click on the stop sign. Loudness value keeps changing with my voice. I'll generate some sounds with a little 32 piano key keyboard. I'll play a note that sounds like a piano key. Watch the loudness value fade to 0. Started all the way up at 100, made its way back down to 0. One more time. Watch the value. Now I'll use a setting that'll sustain the keys a little longer. I'll play a few notes from Beethoven's Fiordalisa and watch the values change. One more time. Notice that it can sustain a key and hold the loudness value. I'll hold the key down. Keeps a pretty steady value around 11 or 12. I'll make sure the program is stopped. As the loudness values change, it's difficult to really get an idea of the feeling for the values. These numbers change so quickly, it's hard to see if they're increasing, decreasing, really what's happening with the loudness levels. I can make a loudness meter to show the current loudness. I'll delete the cat. Right-click, delete. There are many ways to visualize this data. This challenge is focused on multimedia input, so I want something simple yet helpful. I'll make a dial like a speedometer on a car with an arrow in a circle. For 0 loudness, the arrow will point at about 10 o'clock on the dial. For 50 loudness, the arrow will point at 12 o'clock. For 100 loudness, the arrow will point at about 2 o'clock. I'll get my dial sprite. I'll go to New Sprite, Things, Button 1. I'll put it in the middle. Go to Motion, go to, make it 0, 0. Events, when the green flag is clicked. I'll click on this, it'll run it now. Dial's in the center. I need my dial pointer. I'll go to New Sprite, Things, Arrow 2. I want the arrow to rotate around the middle. I'll go to Motion, go to, set it to 0, 0. Events, green flag. I'll run it. The arrow's a little bit too big right now, or the dial's a little too small. I want the dial to be a little bit larger. I'll go to Button 1, go to Looks, Set Size. I'll add that on initialization. See what 150% looks like. Try it. That's better, but I don't like the arrow where it is. I move the arrow to 0, 0. Why is the arrow in the middle there? I'd like the end to be in the middle. I'll go to Costumes, Arrow 2. I'll take a look at where Costume Center is. The center of the costume is in the middle of the arrow. The Go To block moves the sprite's costume center to the XY location on the stage. I'd like the center to be here, so this will be in the middle of the dial. I'll move the crosshairs. Now my pointer's in a nice location. I'll go to Scripts. The pointer pivots at the center now, that's good, but what angles to use? I'll go to Motion. It'll be tricky to use turn clockwise and counterclockwise. I'd have to know where I am, whether to turn clockwise or counterclockwise, and then by how much. Relative movement will be very difficult. I'll use point in direction. I'll click on this for 90 degrees. That's where it's at right now. I'll change it to 0, which is up, and negative 90 to the left. It'll be easiest if the dial uses 0 to 100 degrees with 50 at the top. I'll go to my diagram. As I just showed, the pointer points up when the direction is 0, to the left when the direction is minus 90 degrees, and to the right when the direction is 90 degrees. I want loudness 0 to point at negative 50 degrees. I want loudness 50 to point at 0 degrees, and I want loudness 100 to point at positive 50 degrees. It's a simple mapping to change the loudness values to degrees. How do I get 0 to negative 50, 50 to 0, and 100 to 50? How do I change 0 to negative 50? Subtract 50 from the loudness. 0 minus 50 is negative 50. 50 minus 50 is 0. 100 minus 50 is 50. Only need to point in a direction by taking loudness and subtracting 50. Again, a 0 loudness minus 50 gives me negative 50 for degrees. 50 for loudness minus 50 leaves 0 degrees. Loudness of 100 minus 50 leaves 50 for 50 degrees. That's a lot of words for one simple block. That's the challenge sometimes, getting the correct block. I'll go back to Scratch and make this change for the dial's pointer. I'll need a loop for the arrow to keep checking the loudness value. Go to Control, Forever, Point in Direction, go to Operators, minus 50, back to Sensing, Loudness. This will go too fast. Only want to sample about 20 times a second. Control, wait. If I wait for 1/20th of a second, that's 0.05. That'll sample 20 times a second. Before I can run this, I need a few labels of loudness on the dial. Move that up a little bit. Come back. I'll duplicate this. Get rid of these. Now I can try some values. I'll try a loudness of 0. Arrow's pointing at a loudness of 0. I need to put a label there. I'll put it on the backdrop. I'll go to the stage, backdrops. I want text. I'll use the Scratch font. I want to add the number 0. Click again. A little far away. Select it. I'll move it around. See what that looks like. That's good. I'll take a guess on the 50 and the 100. Text. 50. Down maybe a little bit. Let's try about there. Let's see. That might be pretty good. One more. Try 100. Move it. That looks like it about balances with a 0. I'll see if these are close enough. Go back to Scripts. Arrow 2. Try a couple more values. Try a loudness value of 50 now. Run it. Pointing nicely at the 50. Try 100. Pointing at the 100. That's good enough for this example. I'll get rid of this now. How can I test this code? I could type in different values in this loop, 0, 50, and 100, and try a few other values in between, but instead of using a loudness variable, I'll create my own variable. Then I'll use the monitor to let me try lots of different values. Data, make a variable. I'll call it my loudness. For the sprite only, okay. Move it over. I'll use it instead of loudness. If I double click on a monitor, it changes to showing only its value. Double click again. I have the variable. I also have a handle for adjusting the value. I'll run the program, make sure it's stopped. Now it's running. My loudness is at 0, so the arrow keeps pointing at 0. Now if I grab the handle, I can drag it and the dial moves. Fortunately, the handle goes from 0 up to 100, which is the exact range I want to test. Very handy. So now I've tried all the values pretty much in between. Looks like that's working nicely. I'll stop it. I'm confident that loudness will work correctly. I'll get rid of this, uncheck it, put loudness back in. I've tried out the loop. It worked nicely with my variable. Now I'll use the loudness variable. I'll try these values with the piano. Start the program. You can see my voice changing the dial now. Notice how the arrow gives a little more information than just a bunch of numbers that quickly flash by. I'll play the piano note again. Watch the dial's pointer and see the loudness fade to 0. One more time. Interesting how the dial bounces back and forth as it fades. I'll play a little bit of Beethoven's tune again. One more time. That's working nicely, and the dial helps see more information about the data. I'm finished with this challenge. I hope you'll play with the program and get comfortable with the loudness variable, and, even without a microphone, get comfortable with the dial. Try changing the program. Try creating a high watermark variable. It's a variable that has the highest loudness value seen while the program ran. Try changing the arc for the dial so it covers a larger area. Perhaps something simple like using 200 for the range instead of 100. Then the ratio here would simply be a 1:2 ratio. But above all, have fun with the program.